he came that morning from the city, and I asked him that, I had seen this object and if he knew anything about it. And then he looked at it and said, "Oh, congratulations, you discovered a supernova." And I asked him, "How do you know? Do you have a catalog?" And then he looked at me and said, "I am the catalog." Because he was the guy who actually cataloged all supernovas. So at that point, I believed that I was the first one to have seen that star exploding. So I'm Duilia de Mello. I'm a professor in physics. I'm an astronomer. I work with galaxies that are not the Milky Way. So as a professor at Catholic University of America, I teach astronomy and I do research in extragalactic astrophysics. I was a scientist since I was a kid because I asked a lot of questions. I was very curious. I wanted to know why, and I just wanted to discover more about the universe. So I decided that I was going to become an astronomer so I would know everything about the universe. So that's why I chose to be an astronomer.
What role does beauty play in your work as a scientist?
Beauty is very important in my work. Every time you look at an image, especially with the Hubble Space Telescope, because that's my favorite instrument, you always experience beauty. You can't deny that. When you look at an image that Hubble has taken of anything in the universe, you will be absolutely in awe because it is really an amazing instrument. So I have experienced many times, not just when I'm staring at an image, but also at the sense of discovery. So there is beauty in discovering something. So a long time ago, when I was in Chile, in one of the mountains in Chile, I discovered a supernova, a star that exploded. And I was the first person to see that. And when I realized that, that was like an unbelievable moment. And I think that is probably a changing point in my career because it brought me back that feeling that I had when I was a kid, that I wanted to know more about the universe. So that kind of triggered back all my feelings. So I do still feel that when I look at the deep images of the universe that Hubble has taken. So that feeling is a feeling of beauty. You do appreciate creation, and you do see that with a different eye when you actually admit that. It's very important to feel pleasure in beauty in science. The beauty of discovery, I think it doesn't come like this eureka moment that people think, right? That you're like, ooh, and it's something that kind of builds up. So it's a feeling that you have of accomplishment. So, and it's also a feeling of advancing knowledge. So it's this, when you look at from outside and you see that you made that contribution, it's absolutely great. So every time that I look, for instance, at the star that exploded, that I was the first one to see it, when I look at the papers or the articles that are being written today about that supernova, and I think, oh my gosh, and I was the one who discovered that. It's really, it's important. It's important to admit that you feel that feeling because it triggers other feelings afterwards. And it's the pleasure of being a scientist. So I feel a lot of pleasure being a scientist. So back in 1997, the supernova is now 25 years old. So back in 1997, I was in one of the telescopes in Chile in an observatory. And I was by myself. And I was observing a sample of galaxies. Those are colliding galaxies that kind of pass through each other. And it takes, millions and millions of years for the reaction of the passage. It's like a ballet between galaxies. So I was observing one of these galaxies, and then all of a sudden, I counted the number of stars that I saw in the sky, that I had a map of the sky, and there was an extra star. And I was like, am I in the wrong place? So I couldn't believe it, right? So I counted again and again, and then I decided to pass the instrument that I was going to use over this extra star. I did some triangulation and I thought, wow, this is really close to that galaxy that I'm supposed to observe, because you don't really see the galaxy, they're too faint. So I passed this instrument in front of this extra star, And I had to integrate the time. It was like 20 minutes until you get the data. And at that point, my boyfriend came to say goodnight because he's also an astronomer and he was observing in another telescope. But his time was over, so he was going to sleep. And then I told him that I think I discovered a supernova. So he came actually to give me a sandwich because it was like midnight or 1 a.m., something like that. And then he's like, "Oh, you're kidding." And I said, "No, I think so. It has to be." And then, I told him to wait because it was that 20-minute wait. So when the 20-minute was over, then the thing popped up in the screen of the computer, right? And then I look at it and said, "Oh, it is a supernova," because you could actually tell, because what I was doing, I was taking the spectra of the object. So it means that I was looking at the chemical composition of the object that I was observing. So I was looking at the chemical composition of the supernova. And because it had exploded, the spectrum was very messy. So it was very different from what I expected. So that was like, so I sent Tommy to the library and Tommy went to get some books because at that time we did not have internet on our observing area. So he went to get the books. I called another astronomer who was in charge and asked him if this was a supernova. And then he said, "Yeah, congratulations, you discovered a supernova." But I still did not believe it. And it was only like next day, because I asked him, I wanted to see a catalog or something, right? Because how do I know I was the first one to ever see this? So he said that the guy who was an expert in supernova will be on the mountain at that time tomorrow morning, right? The day after. So I didn't sleep very much. His name is Stefano, this other guy, and he came that morning from the city, and I asked him that I had seen this object and if he knew anything about it. And then he looked at it and said, "Oh, congratulations, you discovered a supernova." And I asked him, "How do you know? Did you have a catalog?" And then he looked at me and said, "I am the catalog." Because he was the guy who actually cataloged all supernovas. So at that point, I believed that I was the first one to have seen that star exploding.
What advice would you have for scientists who have still not experienced the beauty of discovery?
Yeah, I think one also has to remember that there is beauty in discovering. And also, I think sometimes people don't realize what they have done and the importance of their work. So they might have already written important things, important discoveries, and they just don't see, they see that as routine. So I recommend people to look it up, when they are doing the scientific method. The result is a discovery. So they have to kind of give them a little, pat on the shoulder saying that they recognize it as a discovery. If you're the first one to ever propose something, you're the first one to ever realize something, you discovered something. It happened to me also when I discovered what I call the blue blobs. So the blue blobs are nursery of stars that are born outside galaxies. And I had a kind of a feeling that this happened already, that I would expect to see the stars somewhere. So I was looking for them already. So I applied the scientific method, right? I had a question. I had some kind of a hint that this happened. I had a method that I was developing to find them. And then when I find them, it is that moment of discovery. But of course, you're writing your papers, you're doing your table, you're analyzing your data, so you don't have the eureka moment. But you have to kind of see that inside your research, that you do have that moment, that you kind of put it all the puzzle together and you wrote your article. So it's just, people are not used to that. They tend to see science as their daily job, but it's more than that. So to the people who haven't experienced this feeling of discovery, I think you probably have, you just don't realize it.
Why should the public care about beauty in science?
I only do science because I love it, right? Because I like it, and I see the beauty in what I do. you have to be able to communicate that to the public so they can actually sympathize or even enjoy that beauty with you, right? So I think it's easier for the public to see the beauty if it's something that is obviously beautiful. But if it's not obviously beautiful, like the images of Hubble are obviously beautiful. But if it's something that, it's an equation or it's something, a theory that you're proposing, an interpretation that you're proposing, you have to explain to the public why is that important and why you think that is beautiful. And there's nothing wrong about using the word beautiful. It's actually important to use it and show your enthusiasm to the public. After all, we're all contributing to society with a little bit of science that we do, right? We want to really have a society that kind of understands science. And, we're going through a strange phase right now with science deniers. So it's really important to tell them that science, is saving us, and science will have a major role in society. It's something that we do together with the public. It can't be just scientists doing science. So it has to be a society is doing science. So I think that, trigger the curiosity in the kids is super important. I always say that every kid is born a scientist and we spoil them afterwards. Because they're explorers of the world when they're discovering everything, right? And this is what science is about. We are always asking questions and always trying to answer them. And kids do that every single minute of their lives. So why should they stop when they grow up? So this is why we have to tell them how beautiful that is and trigger that curiosity that they had when they were kids.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you liked that video, please hit that thumbs up button and share it with your friends. Also, please take a second to hit the subscribe button because it really helps us out.